Hello and welcome to this first lecture in this new section on holistic perspective, the first aspect of system thinking. So, in this section, we will give you a pretty good, pretty in-depth view of holistic purpose. You will see, we will keep drilling down till the time we come to the bottom of the things, so that you have a good understanding of the holistic perspective. And in this lecture, we will start talking about how does we give you an overview of how does system thinking consider all the entire system, including its components, interactions, and the environment in which it operates. So we'll give you a quick overview of that in this, and then in subsequent lectures, we will take you through each of these in a lot more detail. So, how do you think a system thinking consider the entire systems by taking into account its components, interactions, and environment when it operates? Any thoughts? How does this holistic perspective happen? See, the system thinking starts by identifying all the components or elements that make up the system being studied. So that's how it starts. So that is the first dimension of the holistic perspective. All components that the system is made of. Then the system thinking goes beyond simply identifying the components of the system, but also examines how these components interact with each other. So it is not a static system. It says, okay, these are the components, and this is how these interactions are taking place, and how these components are interacting is the second part of the holistic perspective compared to a static system. And not only that, system thinking acknowledges that systems do not exist in isolation but are embedded into a larger context or environment. And this system thinking offers a powerful approach for addressing complex problems and fostering sustainable solutions. How sustainable? Because the non-sustainability of solutions comes from not being able to react to the environment. Environment changes and the solution that you have designed no more remains relevant for the environment, and then you go out of applicability. So being relevant to environment, it enables and fosters a sustainable solution. So let's take a look at the component identification in this in many lectures that we'll come through. It's a important part of the holistic perspective, and let's take a look at how does the component identification happen. What do you think? How could you go about identifying the components? So the system thinking starts by identifying all the elements and components that makes up the system being studied. That's what we just talked to you. Now these components can be of different kind. They can be tangible entities, and these could be tangible entities like physical objects, organizations, or individuals, living and non-living things. But they're tangible. One can touch, feel, and talk to them, kind of a thing. As well as there are intangible elements like processes, relationship, and information flows that you can only feel, that you can kind of perceive, but you actually can't see, right? You can't touch them, you can't feel them. So by recognizing and defining these components, system thinkers establish the boundaries of the system understanding. So we have now kind of started defining the system, and we will talk about in a lot more detail how do you define a system boundary. But this is what happens in the holistic perspective. So you identify components, the different kinds of component, and you have defined a boundary of the system under study. Now the question is how to identify all the components and elements that make up the system being studied. Now, it's a crucial step, obviously, identify all the components, because if you do not identify the components well, you would have not defined the system well, and hence your system thinking will go in this area. But this involves a systematic approach. So what are the various steps that you can do to take to identify these components effectively? Let's quickly take an overview of that, and then we will get into each one of them as we go forward. So first thing you need to do is define the system boundary, right? Because the system is defined by the components within the components and interaction within the boundary in a larger context of environment. So you need to segregate your system from the environment. Second, then you need to identify who are the key stakeholders in the system. And how do you do that? What does it mean? We will take a look at as we go forward later on. Then you gather data and information about the components from the stakeholders, about the interaction. So you define all those, you gather all the data and information. Then you create a map, a system, a visual map of the system or a diagram, right? And then you brainstorm and collaborate about what are the various tools, using various tools that you can use, and about the possible solutions and possible ideas. And then you iterate and refine. And then in that you also lastly consider external factors. So this is how the components identification happens. So you define the system boundary, you identify key stakeholders, gather data and information, create a system map, brainstorm and collaborate, and use system thinking tool. And you keep iterating and refining the whole process, considering the external factors. So what do we do next? So we will now dig deep into each of these steps, starting with the next lecture. How does one go about defining the system boundary? Let's take a to basically to do the component identification from a holistic perspective. So thank you so much for watching this first holistic perspective lecture in this course systems thinking. I hope you're continuing to learn new things, continuing to enjoy, and I do look forward to see you again in the next lecture. Please feel free to message me if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer your question. And also download the PDF file to take a look at anything that is of specific interest to you.